Welcome to hour number 3 live right here on College Football Today. He is Joe Lisi. He is Kevin Walsh. I am Ben Stevens. We get you set for the opening weekend in November. It is week number 10 of this 2024 college football season. We stick in the SEC to start this third hour. Many an intriguing matchup on this opening Saturday of this month, the final of the regular season in college football. Tennessee, an intriguing team. Off of a bye, off of a huge win on Rocky Top in the third Saturday in October against Alabama. But what does this Tennessee team look like in SEC play? Is it the offense we saw the opening 3 weeks? Absolutely not. Is it one of the more sound and stellar defenses in the country? Yes, so. And they are taking on a Kentucky team who is the worst scoring offense in the Southeastern Conference. Lisi Guy, the Vols, laying 3 scores today at home in Knoxville against the Cats. How do you break down this SEC affair?
Well, they've won 3 straight. They won last year in Lexington, 33-27. They did cover as basically a 4-point road dog in that matchup. What do we see against Alabama? 211 rushing yards on the ground. Nico playing off of play action, made some plays, but the defense totally contained Jalen Milroe. On the flip side, there's no identity for Kentucky heading into this matchup. They used to be a dominant front seven, very good secondary. They're still only giving up 178 passing yards per game, but I have no confidence in Brock Vandagriff and that offense. They can't run the football like they could years ago with Chris Rodriguez, sustained drives. They're only averaging $132 on the ground. They're both coming out of a bye week. The fact that this line is 17.5, I'm inclined to take the points. I'm not going to be betting this game most likely, but if I had to, I would take the Cats because I think that's too big of a number. Tennessee wins.
You're not betting it? Great. I'm betting it. I'm betting Kentucky. Stay away from this game. Stay away from any game involving me, especially tomorrow's Eagles-Jaguars. Okay? Let's just get...
Whoa.
Let's you rattled me, right? But
why did I rattle you with the Eagle game?
Yeah, you did.
That was a break.
You did. Yeah, but it's still bothering.
Lingering. It's lingering.
It really is.
It is.
It's like you attacked my family. I didn't like.
Take a look to the right. Brock Vandagriff.
Yeah, Brock Vandagriff covers this number today, 17.5. This is a spot that Stoops has been in a few times this season, and he's been fantastic. Against Georgia, oh my goodness, up against it. They almost win the game. Oh, miss. All right, listen, that was one thing, but they win the game outright here. Look, Stoops is having a terrible season. Yeah. He's actually found himself on the hot seat. Terrible timing. They just let him back inside Rupp Arena. There's so many good things happening in Lexington. That college team's going to rip and roar this season.
Really?
But, yeah. I tell you, this guy, he's not making it through the segment, I'll be honest with you, all right? I'm going to hog tie this guy. Yeah. I really, really do think that Kentucky covers this. I don't trust that Tennessee's going to have figured out their offense over the bye week here. They'll trust Dylan Sampson, which means it'll be even more difficult to pull away on this total.
And they should trust Dylan Sampson. Kentucky, an elite defense in the opening few games of this season. Last 2, they've allowed at least 24 points. Florida put up 48. Jaden Ball had 5 rushing scores. Auburn scored 24. Jarquez Hunter, the back for the Tigers, 278 yards in multiple touchdowns. Dylan Sampson's prop, 110 and a hook. But this Tennessee offense is very peculiar to figure out. 191 points, first 3 games of the year in non-conference play. Only 86 in their last 4, never more than 25. Their point differential in the first 3 games, plus 178. In their last 4, it is just plus 18. You ready for this? I know you're going to hate it. Nikki Treats, Nico Iamaleava on Halloween weekend extended. More like Nikki Tricks, the way he's been playing in SEC action. $1.95 or less in all 4 conference games. His passing yards prop 204, and you're getting from both sides. Yeah, let's go 2-shot. Lisi, slide over. We'll take this for the rest of this SEC Saturday. But Tennessee's defense is elite. Third best scoring, third best total, second best rush defense in the country. Lean under in this game if you were to ask. 45 and a hook. I think your mother, my mother, your best friend, your cousin's best friend, everybody's betting South Carolina as the underdog today at home in Columbia. The Gamecocks getting 2.5 points against a top 10 Texas A&M team, Kev, who was exceptional last week in the second half, winning a huge game against LSU. A&M lost its opener, has won 7 straight. Texas A&M has been booked as a favorite in all 8 games this year, just 3-5 against the spread, but all 3 covers in games where the point spread in SEC action was a field goal or less. It's exactly what the point spread is here in Williams-Brice, and yet the Gamecocks looked on as a good underdog side today.
No, look, you're right. My mom called me, Kevin, what are we doing? This South Carolina looks frisky. Here's the thing. Everybody who likes South Carolina is very key on what they can do defensively, and they're overlooking an offense that I think has brought juice throughout this season, other than the Ole Miss letdown game where they were held to 3. But, again, they moved the ball a lot more than the 3 points suggest. I love the over in this game. Whether it's Marcel Reed or Wegman, A&M has shown an ability to score. The defense is solid. It's not a world beater, though. The ball can be moved against A&M. I played this over at 43.5. One of my favorite picks on the board today.
Yeah, my mom has a motto, why you always taking points. So, I go contrarian, though. I will say South Carolina coming out of a bye week. Night game in Williams-Brice, very difficult. And this defense for South Carolina, 18 points allowed per game, 112 rushing yards allowed, only 188 in the back end. The potential letdown spot, I'll take a shot. Again, not a game that I'm backing from, putting money in and gambling. But if I had a bet, I would take a shot with South Carolina.
4-1 against the spread in SEC play this year. That's Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. 3-1 against the number as an underdog. Over in 4 of their last 5. Kev, I look at this spot as seeing some points as well. 43 and a hook. Let me make this very simple for you, Mike Elko and Colin Klein. The answer at quarterback is the freshman, Marcel Reed. It is not Connor Wigman. Last week in the second half, 2 of 2 for 70 passing yards. Fine on the ground, 62 yards, 3 rushing scores. And he opens it up on the ground as well for both Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels. Moss, 90 yards on the ground in all 3 Reed starts this year. It is the way to get after this South Carolina team, but South Carolina has been good up front this year. One of 4 teams in the country allowing less than 105 yards on the ground and has sacked the opposing quarterback 25-plus times alongside Ole Miss, UTSA, and Miami. Speaking of Ole Miss, they've got an interesting game today, Joe, on the road in Fayetteville, taking on Arkansas. The Runnin' Rebs, more than a touchdown favorite against a really good underdog team. That is the Hogs. We know it's been Arkansas's recipe, Joe. As an underdog with Sam Pittman, can they stay within the number today against the Rebels?
They can. They do have the more consistent quarterback in terms of Jackson Dart. I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly last week. Harris was out of that lineup. They still found a way to win that ball game by 12 points. Sacked Jackson Arnold 6 times in the last 5 minutes to secure that win. Red zone defense was very good, but Arkansas has covered 4 straight in the series. They lost this game last year, 27-20. Again, another team that plays very well against Ole Miss. They're running the football consistently with Braylon Russell. That goes right into the strength of Ole Miss. I don't care. Pittman is a dog, 7.5. Taylon Green, 5 total touchdowns through the air, over 450 total yards of offense, and 58 points. I'm not getting in front of that train. Give me the points with Arkansas.
This is a tricky one here for me. I wish I was just kind of running back to a total, but last week, and I felt there were so many opportunities in that game. It did come in under, though, as I know you were lining up here. This should be a Henry Parrish breakout spot, but I want to see him establish himself in this backfield a little bit more here because he had a little bit of an injury against LSU. It wasn't a stellar game against Oklahoma, but the Razorbacks are vulnerable against the rush.
The Hogs are great as an underdog, 21-10 against the spread with Sam Pittman since the start of 2020. The best among Power 4 programs. Ole Miss covered in its first 4 games of the year, all in non-con, just 1-3 ATS as a favorite in all 4 in SEC action. Quarterback matchups next.
has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The quarterback head-to-head matchups we get you set for here on this opening Saturday.
What is so funny?
Of all the things to say right as we welcome people back from the commercial break, that was good. We'll get to Michigan in just a moment in the quarterback matchup for Davis Warren against Dylan Gabriel. But let's go to the top 5 tilt in Happy Valley. Number 3, Penn State. Number 4, Ohio State. The Buckeyes, a 3.5-point favorite. It's Will Howard for Ohio State. We expect it to be Drew Aller for Penn State. Injured at the end of the opening half last week in Madison against the Badgers. Bo Perbula filled in wonderfully in that second half. Penn State survives, remains unbeaten. Let's start, Kev, with Will Howard, a Pennsylvania guy who has made it very clear. He was a Penn State fan growing up out of high school. All he wanted to do was represent the Nittany Lions. He wasn't recruited. He started his college career at Kansas State. Now, of course, his first year in Columbus. He said after last week's narrow escape against Nebraska, we'll find out next week if I was good enough to play in State College. What do you think he shows today inside Beaver Stadium?
Yeah, I think Will Howard has a chance to have a game that changes the conversation and not one that I really thought was going to be on the board for him this season. I think we could see Will Howard enter the Heisman talk with a win on the road here against Penn State. The Nittany Lions have not seen an offense with all of the weapons that Ohio State will bring to the table. The closest test was USC. And if not for Lincoln Riley being just completely dead set on blowing every game this year, that would have been a loss. They allowed 30 points in that football game there. Will Howard, again, I did not think would have a real chance because there's so many guys, right? We were doing the Jeremiah Smith thing, and it's like, Judkins and Henderson. But with Gabriel's case being best quarterback on best team, Will Howard is going to have a similar shot with the way the odds are moving. We went through this earlier in our show, but this is an Ohio State team favored today, favored to make the Big Ten title game, and would be favored over Gabriel, Joe. It's not going to be easy, but at 100-1, I don't think that Howard is being given enough of a chance through that number. I think he's live.
No, it's a great look. And what is he, plus 185, 190 to hit pay dirt today in this matchup. Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out, especially in goal line situations. I'll say this when we look at the quarterback situation. James Franklin has never had the quarterback advantage heading into this game, right? It's always been Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud, even last year with Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison. They need Drew Aller to get through 192.5 yards. I don't care if he's banged up. If he's playing, he needs to produce. That's the bottom line when we look at the quarterback matchup. We've seen Will Howard step up. We talk about the completion percentage, the touchdowns through the air, and it's one thing to do it against USC. That has not been your kryptonite. Your kryptonite has been Ohio State and Michigan. You're at home. You laid an egg last year. What did he throw for? 50 yards and under 50% completion percentage? Maybe $112, whatever it was.
$191. He was 18 of 42, though.
The whole first half, they were down. They had about 100 yards of total offense. He needs to get in the 200s for them to have a shot today.
No doubt about it. And last year, in the 4 ranked games for Penn State, Drew Aller less than a 50% completion percentage in 3 of them. The only ranked opponent Penn State has seen this year, the Illini of Illinois, 15 of 21, but for only 135 yards. That was a season low. Last week in the opening half against Wisconsin, 14 of 18 for $148 and a touchdown. Again, if Bo Perbula does need to play, and he has played in 5 games before last week in Camp Randall, 11 of 13 for 98 yards and a touchdown in that second half, nearly 30 yards on the ground as well. Will Howard's defining game so far for the Buckeyes against Oregon, 326 yards, 3 total touchdowns. Yes, it will be remembered for the ill-timed scramble at the end, but he was very good in that matchup. Let's get to Oregon. Dillon Gabriel taking on Davis Warren. You almost can't compare these numbers, but in a way, that is the story. Davis Warren now in his second consecutive Big Ten start, 128 and a hook. For Gabriel, Kev, it's 274 and a half.
Yeah.
Dillon Gabriel has only thrown for more than 300 yards once this year against FBS foes for Oregon, and yet will enter this opening weekend in November with the second best price to win a Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
Another Heisman-like spot to put things on tape. How does Dillon Gabriel attack that Michigan defense?
Yeah, I think he attacks it relentlessly. Will Johnson is out again. Yep. I think that there is a chance here today that Oregon looks to make what will be their biggest statement so far if they can win this one by margin. I've mentioned it already. I'll gladly mention it again, despite this being the quarterback segment. Evan Stewart today, 40-plus receiving, way too light. He's been the guy, Lisi, he's been the guy for Gabriel in the big games as well. Tej Johnson's awesome. Evan Stewart, from a talent perspective, right? Think about it, Emeka Egbuka against Jeremiah Stewart, right? Or Jeremiah Smith, excuse me.
Yeah.
Smith, we know the talent, but Emeka always gets the work.
Yeah.
Well, this is an instance where I know Tez gets the work. Evan Stewart is supposed to be the talent, and up against premium competition, he shined.
Yeah, and he does, the underneath routes, the dig routes over the middle. That's an opportunity, especially in critical third downs for Dillon Gabriel against this defense to shine and sustain drives. I think when you look at, this matchup, I think it's more important for Dillon Gabriel to get over his number than Davis Warren. The reason why I say that is if Davis Warren is throwing for $150, $160, that means that they're most likely trailing in this matchup and not running the football consistently. That's not their MO. Again, get this game 21-17, fourth quarter, sustained drives. Again, I'm not going to back Warren. I would back Dillon Gabriel because they want to push tempo.
Gabriel's only game north of 300 was 341 against Ohio State, and that was the most we have seen out of Evan Stewart in an Oregon uniform, $149. It's the freshman against the veteran in Jacksonville, Lisi. It's Carson Beck, 8 touchdowns to 8 INTs in 5 SEC games for Georgia. It's DJ Lagway in his first ever cocktail party against UGA. How do you compare these two entering this matchup?
Again, Lagway, I think, has to do more with his legs in this ballgame. Carson Beck needs to get back to his ways. $175, 3 interceptions against Texas won't cut it and cover this line.
We've talked about Cam Ward bounce backs. Beck could very well be in line as well. Less about the Gators' defense and more about a player of his talent level finding his level this week.
Last year against the Gators for Carson Beck, 315 yards and 2 touchdowns. The other ranked teams in action on this Saturday, including Army, next.
has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump, his release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot a 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two other ranked teams we have yet to discuss here on the opening Saturday in November, right here, right now. And again, the big news within the last hour for unbeaten Army, who was 7-0 for the first time since 1996. Bryson Daly entering November, the country's leading rusher when it comes to finding pay dirt, 19 scores. Ashton Genty did overtake him last night. But the quarterback for the Black Knights inactive today against Air Force. Dwayne Coleman, the junior, will make his first career start. Has played in 5 games this year for Army. This line was 3 touchdowns. Now it's just 18.5 in favor of Army inside Meechie Stadium today against the Falcons. Lisi guy, it's a large spread for a service academy game, and yet Air Force is the only FBS program this year that has failed to cover a number all season long. Can the Falcons keep it closer than the odds expect?
I think they can. Again, it's a rivalry game with these matchups. You know, you see these teams typically step up, and Air Force was in this situation last year, 8-0 overall, and Army as a 13.5-point underdog struck the upset. That cost them the Mountain West Championship as well, as they continued to reel off 3 straight losses after that. So now we talk about payback. If there's going to be a Super Bowl type of game, it is for Air Force catching. I took a 22.5 and 21.5 respectively. I would still take it at over 17 just because of that factor, Kev. Again, I know Army's defense only giving up 79 rushing yards per game, but when your emotional leader is gone, and they're fighting for a college football playoff berth with Navy, a lot of pressure on Army right now.
Okay. So I don't want to be weird about this because I understand how betting works, and beating a spread by, 3-4 points is a great thing. So, yes, I'd rather be holding Air Force plus 22.5, which is what I have, than Army minus 22.5. What I would say, though, is if you were to tell me, hey, Daly is out, what do you want to do with the game? Nothing. I really wouldn't. Yeah. Because Bryson Daly has been legitimate Heisman level for this football team. That is how good he's been. Now, I know that people will say, how do you not then love Air Force even more? It's just sometimes how sports work, where the dynamic changes. And all of a sudden, Army, if they're without Daly, well, they are without Daly today, they lock in a little bit extra. And I know people, come on, you don't think they're locked in for Air Force? Air Force is dreadful. Yeah. And I don't know if they're locked in enough to win this game by margin. But if they now need to wake up a little extra, if all of a sudden now with the backup in, everything kind of stays the same for all 4 quarters, things can just get a little bit tricky. Again, heading into today, this was my favorite side. Yeah. Legitimate. Because to me, Army and Navy are the legitimate same football team. And Navy laid 9.5 going to Air Force this season. Spread math there, this number was too high at 21. So I, of course, would still lean towards Air Force, but to remove a player of that level, it just throws things off. Look, for me with college football, it is such a weird and wild sport, which is why we love it, that when you get that level of weirdness, I'd rather step back if I can.
Bryson Daly, 110 yards on the ground in all 6 FBS games at bare minimum for the Black Knights this year. 17 rushing scores in the last 5 for Army. And to Kev's point, efficient throwing the football, 47 pass attempts this year and 7 passing touchdowns. Air Force did lose that game to the Naval Academy 34-7, did not cover the number, and it ticked over of a total that was in the upper 30s. Here's an intriguing game in Champaign today. One ranked team in Illinois, deserving of that ranking. I guess we shall see. They got hammered on the road last week against Oregon in Eugene. Meanwhile, a Minnesota team that's won 3 straight games, covered in 4 straight in Big Ten action, and Joe, the road favorite today in Champaign against an Illini team that we know has been a good underdog under Brett Bielema. How do you see it playing out?
I actually like Minnesota here. Illinois has won 3 straight, but I still believe Minnesota is the right side. Got up to 3.5. We're seeing 2.5s in the market. Did take it on the money line, minus 134. I like their secondary. Their secondary is only allowing 162 passing yards per game. I don't think Altmaier will be able to have success. They could buckle down, and I think they can run the football on the Illini after they went out west to face off against a physical Oregon team. Give me Minnesota minus the points.
Look, we are used to a ranked team catching points against an unranked team. It rarely happens for the home team to be the ranked one catching points. And it's just one of those things, big picture, why I don't then have to, in 4 weeks, pretend that someone who beat Illinois got a great win. They're clearly not a great team.
Illinois 4-1 against the spread as a dog this year. We'll talk more about that and the rest of our betting cards for Week 10 next.
Has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from 3. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from 3 for the season. But if he's at 42.3%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Funny.
We welcome you back to College Football Today, live right here on SportsGrid. It is now time for our betting cards for week number 10 in the first Saturday in November. Our big game best bets, those 5 marquee matchups that we highlighted in our opening hour. We'll have a pick for all 5 to close out the show. Here are the games that are not our CFT games of the week. And when in the world did I become the guy with the most picks on the betting card? I'm starting to call...
No, now I got to add picks. Now I got to...
I call him a wheel.
Call me a wheel.
Why?
That's messed up. Man.
Why not? That's
they call me
say.
Total Stevens is what they call me. But hey, you're still looking for some wheels. Why don't you take off on your betting card there for week 10?
It was 3-0 last week on the early betting card, so we might as well continue the momentum heading into this week. We left off talking about Minnesota and Illinois. I like Minnesota. I think they're the more physical team heading into this matchup. I laid 3.5. I also laid minus 134 on the money line. I do like the secondary matching up against Altmaier, coming off that emotional loss last week to Oregon. What are you going to get out of Illinois? Even though they're at home, I'll lay the points. Air Force plus the 21.5. We just talked about their ability in a rivalry game. They were in this situation last year. Now Daly, the starting quarterback, is out. I'll take the 3 points in regards to the discount. Do feel that Air Force can be in this game from start to finish. They're not going to win it, but a 4-quarter game I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. 21.5, 18.5, way too many points in regards to that. 2 teams that need to step up. One is USC. We talked about 4-4 overall. They have a speed advantage, I believe, over Washington. Will Rogers is more turnover prone now. After last week, I believe he might revert back to form. I think USC could force some turnovers. Still very good in terms of the back-end pass coverage. I like USC from a speed advantage. It opened at 2.5. Down to 1.5. I think they win this game 10 points or more. They've lost 2 straight to the Huskies, but that was with Michael Penix at the helm. Will Rogers, not the same quarterback. Baylor's playing very well. They got the victory a couple weeks ago against Texas Tech, dominated Oklahoma State. I know Oklahoma State is dead and buried this year, but they still covered that line, came from behind to win that matchup. Sawyer Robertson playing very well. The defense is coming into form. They have the potential to make a very good bowl game. Dave Aranda on the hot seat. TCU coming into town. I think Baylor's playing well at home in Waco, laying the 3.5, guys. They get it done.
I like that look, Lisi guy, but I'm very happy then to go against you in a couple of spots after call a wheel. I'll go to mine quickly here, and then, Kev, we will get to you. As my betting card stands, we got 6. Used to be a prop guy, maybe a side here and there. Now we're a total guy. Total Stevens. Entering week number 10. Ole Miss, Arkansas, under 53.5. Ole Miss under in all 7 games against FBS foes this year. We think of Lane Kiffin and this running Rebs offense as plays, excitement, points. As a favorite 27 times since the start of 2022, under in 19 of 27. Arkansas, a really good underdog, 3-1 against the spread in their 4 games in the SEC, booked as the dog, under in all 4. So we go under today in Fayetteville. Arizona State, Oklahoma State. Over 57.5. I wanted to look at Cam Scatterbo, the running back for ASU, $158 in all 3 wins at least for Arizona State this year against power conference competition. And Oklahoma State is the worst rushing defense in all of the country, giving up more than 250 yards per game. But I think the Sun Devils are going to move it. I think Oklahoma State is going to move it against this Arizona State defense as well. We go over 57.5. And Kev, again, an examination into this Pokes team at some point to have started off 3-0, to drop all 5 of their games here in a row, to bring back everybody. Ollie Gordon II, Alan Bowman, offensive line. What a wild year for Oklahoma State. Texas A&M, South Carolina, over 43.5. Again, A&M has covered in their 3 games this year as a field goal favorite or less in SEC action. There are only 3 covers. All 3 of those games over as well. South Carolina over in 4 of 5 SEC contests, despite good defenses on both sides. just a low number, over 43.5. Iowa favored in both of its Big Ten home games. The Hawkeyes have scored at least 40, and they have covered the number by a ton, an average of better than 17 points per game. Iowa covers 2.5 against Wisconsin today. You like Minnesota minus 3.5, huh? Illinois plus 2.5, sprinkle on the money line. I know that Minnesota has been good, 6-1-1 against the number this year. They've covered in 4 straight. They've won 3 in a row. But the Golden Gophers are better through the air this season than on the ground. Was not my expectation, with Darius Taylor returning only 108 rushing yards for P.J. Fleck in his offense this season, second worst in the Big Ten. And that's the Illini's weakness. I think Illinois, as an underdog, catching points despite the trendy Minnesota number as of this moment. I'll take the Illini, 4-1 against the spread as a dog this year, 3 outright victories. And then we talked about some bad rushing defenses. Iowa State, second best pass defense in the Big 12, the third worst rushing offense, giving up more than 170 yards per game. Taj Brooks, who has rushed for at least $109 on the ground for the Red Raiders in all 7 games he has played in this year, averaging $132, 119 and a hook. He'll go over that rushing yards number today. It was a debate, Kev, between Taj Brooks or Cam Scatterbo or Dylan Sampson. Which big number for a rushing yards prop I wanted to add, because with that number so steep, wasn't sure there was a great edge. I'll go with Taj Brooks because Iowa State allowed 354 to UCF in their last game, $196 to R.J. Harvey. Taj Brooks over that number of 119.5.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of interesting spots there. Admittedly, though, BWS running around with this big card. I might have to make some additions here. I'm not sure I really like what I'm hearing, so be on the lookout. They could be coming at any moment. But for now, the 4 picks that we're on, and over in A&M, South Carolina. I know South Carolina has been good defensively, but this is a very low number, and they've been pretty solid offensively. We've seen them go to Kentucky, go to Alabama, and put up their fair share of points with the Marcel Reed-Wegman combination. It can also give that South Carolina defense a little bit extra to prepare for and create some advantages for the Aggies. I like over 43. Played Air Force at 22.5. It's on its way down. The more I think about it, if Daly's been this good, maybe Air Force just shocks the world and wins this game outright. I mean, I don't know. We can't rule it out at this point. I'm taking the points, though, in that game. I'm taking them with Michigan State. I know fading Indiana has been a fool's errand, but Sparty is a team that we just saw get loads of respect last week against Michigan. No, they didn't get the job done, but trust me, as somebody who was on Michigan, that's because Sparty let them off the hook early. They make an early field goal. They don't fumble. They get up in that game 10-0. That looks a lot different than that final score ultimately indicated there. Add in the fact that Aiden Childs has been playing much better football, averaging well over 8 yards per pass since the bye, completing well above 70% of his passes. I think they'll be able to hang no matter what type of game this is with my guy Curtis O'Rourke, first game back there. Shout out to the kid. And then I love Kentucky catching 17 and a hook here against Tennessee. This is a Stoop step-up spot, simple as. This is a guy who put Georgia on upset alert and beat Ole Miss outright. I know the results have been bad, but he knows that as well. Back against the wall in a game against Tennessee, they cover 17.5 with their defense here, knowing they'll need to key in on the run. If Nico wakes up and remembers who he's supposed to be, and that's how I lose this, fine, so be it. I'm betting against it. Give me the 17.5 with the Wildcats.
Really a tale of 2 teams this year for Kentucky. They've been booked as a favorite in 4 of 6 SEC games. They've lost outright in all 4, but as an underdog, 1-point loss to Georgia, outright victory against Ole Miss on the road in Oxford. This Kentucky team as a dog, a lot different than what they look like when expected to win a game outright. There is so much good stuff to get to you here for our big games of the weekend. We've got 5 to break down in the next 2 segments before we get to kicks at noon Eastern time. Our focus in our next segment on the Big Ten, and a lot of the attention, of course, in Happy Valley. We want to get you the picks before we get to that noon Eastern time kick. So a preview and best bets for number 3 Penn State and number 4 Ohio State is up next.
has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump, his release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The opening Saturday in November of this 2024 college football season. It is week number 10, and it's just over 15 minutes away. He is OK Dubs. That is Kevin Walsh. He is the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Our big game best bets, and of course we start with the first and the biggest game of the day. Noon Eastern time kick in State College, Pennsylvania, inside Happy Valley. It's number 3 Penn State. It's number 4 Ohio State, and the Buckeyes a 3.5-point road favorite. The over-under at 45.5, slightly on the rise. 47 and a hook is where it stands as of last check. Again, this game kicks in 15 minutes. It is the focus of this segment first and foremost as our CFT game of the week. So let's talk the game overall and then dive into how we see it. Lisi Guy, the narrative will be a huge component of this game. Ryan Day just 2-6 against AP top 5 foes in his time in Columbus. James Franklin in his decade in Happy Valley just 1-9 against the Buckeyes and 3-17 against AP top 10 opposition. Lisi Guy, when today is said and through, which program, which head coach is the narrative going to continue for?
I think it's Penn State. They've lost 7 straight in the series, the last 4 by 10.7 points per game. But the fact that they're playing at home and I believe that they can run the football, I think they pull it out. Not sold still, I'll say it. Will Howard's good. He's not elite, and we'll see how he plays on the road today.
Again, I mean, it's all relative, but also that same thing can be true of the quarterback that you're backing today.
But I'd rather take the home team with the points, and I'm not sold on the rushing attack of Ohio State, so we'll see.
Yeah, look, I think Howard's going to be plenty fine in this game. Ohio State, in the 5 games that James Franklin has hosted Ohio State at home, they still go over 32.2 points per game. They've only missed this number twice since James Franklin has been the head coach there. Because I just wanted to take the recent history of it all. This is also an Ohio State offense that struggled last week, only scoring 21 points in the game. So we've got a bounce-back style there. I think they can get through this 24.5 in a number of avenues. The one that isn't up and available, and I understand why, but Penn State's been very leaky to running backs through the air. Kinshawn Judkins or Trevion Henderson today? We saw Judkins catch the game-winning touchdown last week against Nebraska. Don't be surprised to see those guys used in that type of attack here today. Get Penn State playing up, and then it's Emeka and especially Jeremiah Smith down the field.
It's been an offense on the ground that I expected to be otherworldly this year with the athletic Will Howard, with Kinshawn Judkins, with Trevion Henderson, designed by Chip Kelly. Frankly, it hasn't. $188, still 4th best in the Big Ten. But last week against Nebraska, just 2.1 yards per pop. Now, the Huskers are one of the good run defenses in the country. Penn State is better. Nebraska allows 98 yards per game on the ground. Penn State just 93. And the Nittany Lions have been elite in the second half this year. Only 30 points allowed in their 7 games in the final 2 quarters. Just 3.38 yards per play as well. Just for some context, Texas is the best yards per play total defense in the country at 3.81. Penn State in the second, less than 3.4 yards per play. And as I've tried to break down this game, again, the metrics kind of do favor Penn State with where Ohio State enters, but that's where the narrative becomes a part of the handicap. So I'm not going to mess with the side. I'll go to the total. Kev, I actually think we see some points. Over 45.5 is where I bet it a few days ago. It's now up by 2. Ohio State only has a limited sample size this year of playing in a game with less than a 17-point spread. It was against Oregon. They allowed 32 points. Also on the road, that game went well over. Penn State has only played in one Big Ten game where the spread has been less than a touchdown. It was against USC on the road. That game went over 33-30, but was well over even before that overtime. I go over 45.5, now up by 2 points. And I do, just before we get to our other Big Ten battle, want to ask you, these are 2 of 6 teams that are greater than a $6 favorite to reach the college football playoff. The importance of that, the importance of November, the importance of changing the conversation around these 2 head coaches. When the day is through, who do you think leaves Happy Valley feeling just that?
Yeah, look, I lean Ohio State in the game. That's why I'm on their team total here, quite frankly. That is the direction that I look. But again, for Penn State, much less pressure. I know that sounds crazy, but for Penn State, the goal this year is make the college football playoff. They should be able to do that, win or lose. Ohio State might be a different scenario, Joe, if they drop this matchup.
Yeah, and they also have Indiana on deck. So Indiana wins today. They could be undefeated, and they'll have 2 losses. So the no margin of error for Ryan Day and the team on the road. And, again, it's a similar spread to what we saw last year in Columbus, guys.
The narratives and the reactions are going to fly by about 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. Noon Eastern kick. Here are the best bets for our college football today. Game of the week. Get them in right now. 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. To the big house we go in another Big Ten battle. It's the reigning national champs, Michigan, hosting the number 1 team in the country, that is Oregon. And the Ducks have a 14.5-point road favorite in Ann Arbor. 3rd game this year now for Michigan, booked as a home underdog, almost unheard of. How do you see it?
I lean Ducks and under, quite frankly, which is against both of your picks here. I'm not on it. My best bet so far this season is Evan Stewart threw 40-plus yards so far against Boise and Ohio State, combined for over 250 yards in those games, 100-plus in each, a touchdown in each, 12 catches between the 2 games. And we have seen Michigan allow every single power opponent to have multiple receivers go for 40 or more yards, except for Illinois, because that's Altmaier threw for 80. Yeah. So there weren't as much chances there. Evan Stewart blasts through 40-plus receiving.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel's main target, so one of them, so we'll see how that plays out. They're going to throw it to put pressure on Michigan. I like Michigan here. They've only lost 1 game at home. This is a Super Bowl type of situation with the number 1 ranked team in the nation. I think this line is way too much. I thought it should be in the area of maybe 10.5. I'll take the 2 touchdowns with the Wolverines to keep it close, guys.
The Wolverines have been an underdog 3 times this year. In fact, Michigan, a vaunted defense last year, not so much this year. 7th worst in the Big Ten, allowing 21.5 points per game. In those 3 games as a dog, the Maize and Blue have allowed at least 24 points. Oregon has only played in 3 games this year where the spread was less than 3 touchdowns. The Ducks over in all 3 against Ohio State, Oregon State, and Boise State. Again, it's a low number. I go over 44.5. I'm not thinking 55 or 60, a shootout in the big house, but just enough to trickle over 44 and a hook. Our other 3 big games, the cocktail party and a huge Saturday in the ACC. Next.
has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Our other 3 biggest games of this opening Saturday in November. It starts with number 2 Georgia taking on Florida in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville, the 103rd all-time meeting between the Bulldogs and the Gators. Georgia, 14.5-point favorite in this matchup against UF, but Lisi guy, it was 16.5 in favor of Georgia just about 48 hours ago. Yeah. Florida, you're taking them.
Yeah.
14.5 points. How can they keep it close?
It's a rivalry game, and Lagway's mobility. We saw Jalen Milroe attack that defense on the perimeter with an extra week of preparation. I think Florida could be in this number. Again, they're playing with house money heading into this matchup. And Carson Beck, again, 3 interceptions. Last time they played out, only $175. He needs to clean that up. But I'll take a shot in a rivalry game with the points. Chomp, chomp, Gators.
I love you, but you can tell there's no heart in that pick.
He knows he has to do it.
No.
You didn't even call the book yet.
It's not one of your better bets. It's not one of your key games. You can just tell. You can tell. That's all right. Listen, you could call me out. I'm not on Georgia. I'm on Lagway to throw. Right side style. If he's losing, he's trailing, he throws. It's not even.
Wow.
What?
Whoa. You're setting the stage for tomorrow.
Flip it, send it here. We're like, great breakdown. I agree. How did the kid not get through that number? It's 190 and a
Graham
half.
Mertz, I thought, was starting.
Yeah. Look, here's one of my favorite things about this bet is this isn't even close to a premium. On a kid who has one start against Samford and threw for 450 yards and another against Kentucky and threw for 250, I'm not paying for those performances. I'm paying for a freshman quarterback against Georgia. Well, getting him through 190.5 when the Georgia secondary has let not just Jalen Milroe get through numbers, but Michael Van Buren of Miss State. I got to take a shot here. I'm going to take it with Lagway again on a very cheap number at 190 and a hook.
Part of the handicap for me for Georgia and Texas, the last time we saw UGA, there was one elite defense entering Austin. It wasn't Georgia. There was a couple of elite defenses exiting Austin. Georgia was back. I think you saw that dog mentality from Kirby Smart. I believe it continues. 2 covers this year for UGA. Unders in both. Florida's defense on this 3-game cover skid as an underdog has allowed at most 17 points in regulation. I lean under 52.5 for this afternoon in Jacksonville. 2 huge games in the ACC. We start in Death Valley. It's Clemson, ranked 11th in the country, taking on Louisville. In this matchup, they've won 6 consecutive games entering today's contest against Louisville with an average victory margin of more than 27 points.
Wow.
Kev, you've been hesitant about this Tigers team. Does that continue today?
Lisi, it's little Ben. Do you lean Clemson in this game via the props?
Actually, no, I don't like the matchup. Listen, Louisville's been a great dog, 2-0 against the spread this year as a dog. Both losses by just a touchdown.
No.
Well, listen, he's not on it though, Lisi. I mean, we got a chance then, right? I'm trying to make up with him. Just forgive me, Ben. I'm trying to make up with him. That's all.
I love it, brothers in arms.
We're really on my side.
We're both on. I've been very complimentary in the Ben stop.
He has been.
I've been very complimentary. Listen, you've got to wait
at your feet.
A weightless team laying double digits? No way. Easy fade. Louisville. Do not forget the special. Passing touchdown each quarter, plus 400. The fellas love it.
Yeah, they gave up 31 points to Virginia, which is not as explosive as Louisville.
To drop their power rating.
Now, they are 4-0, Clemson at home. They've covered by 28.4 points per game, but I think Louisville's the best offense that they have played. They battled back against Boston College. I think Louisville will be in this game from start to finish. Lost 8 straight in the series to Clemson.
I like points in this game. I would lean over 62.5. I like Phil Maffa's number better, over 97 and a hook. Kev, we've been waiting for him to take that lead role. 18 carries in each of the last 3 games for Clemson on this 6-game win streak. 107 yards at least in 4 of 6. Louisville, best ACC rush defense. Last year, allowing less than 100. The only one this year giving up $136 on the ground. Big Phil Maffa day. Let's get to the other ranked versus ranked top 25 tilt that we have. Number 18 Pitt is perfect. Number 20 SMU is also perfect in ACC action. And what do we like here, Joe Lisi? Start us off.
Yeah, I just think Pitt's a more complete team. Holstein is playing, and the way they were opportunistic against Kyle McCord and Syracuse, a more explosive offense. Well, I like Pitt to win the ball.
It's not you. It's
this.
Pitt wins the. I think.
They were my go for the loot. I think the Panthers went outright.
I will tell you this. I promise you that if at any point they get to 58, I will root in 59.
Look at this.
Thank you, man.
Look at this.
This is called a setup.
Head-to-head.
Yeah. This game lands 58. Double wheel shitty. They're going to, that's so bad.
Yeah,
that's
it's a little
so
bit tough.
bad.
I think the total's now down to 56.
Yeah.
Hey, listen,
I got the
for
best
college
of the
football
number.
Today on this opening Saturday in November. Kevin Walsh, Joe Lisi, Ben Stevens. Week 10 starts right now.
Done a really nice job of good restaurants, bars, right on the side streets near Prudential.
Behind me,
yeah, they did a great job. Good for Newark,
I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You know what? What can one of these quarterbacks or wide receivers do for me this year to make a wager? It's got to be the running conditions there for Jaden Daniels.
In regards to Jaden Daniels, you know I was on him in regards to the Heisman Trophy. I actually think he's going to do it on the ground, through the air, 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, playing in Cliff Kingsbury's offense where he wants to spread it and throw it. I think he's going to put up dynamic numbers.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
New to the Live Golf Plus app. Watch Live Golf any way you want it. Follow any group. Replay any shot. Anytime, anywhere. Any questions? Watch Live Golf live and on demand.
He had 4 grabs in the first half for just over 30 yards, was injured, came back in briefly, and then had to be carted off.
We were pessimistic on Puka Nakua's injury to the same right knee, of that being a nothing, just a bursa, and that's it, as per Sean McVay. We felt there could be a small PCL component.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.